Hi, my name's Terry. About 10 years ago, I decided to stop drinking alcohol, and I quickly realized how hard that was going to be. And that struggle that I had reminded me of a great story that my father told me right before I started college. He knew that I was a pretty average student in high school, making a lot of B's and C's. I just wasn't applying myself in high school. And he knew I was going to struggle once I got to college. So he told me, he said, "Son, will you just do me a favor? Do me a favor. I want you to go to every single class. Every single class. And if you're struggling with a particular subject, what I want you to do is I want you to sit on the front row and ask a lot of questions." You see, my father knew that if I just showed up for myself, if I just showed up, that I could get it done, that I would finish college. There will be days when you just want to say, the hell with it all, I'll start again tomorrow. But tomorrow can be tricky because one day will turn into 2 days, 2 days will turn into a week, and a week might turn into never. I just want you to know that if you keep showing up for yourself, that you will get this done. My last drink was in October of 2018, October 1st of 2018. I actually have the date right here on this penny that my wife gave me to remind me. And that's why I wear this little reminder around my neck of when I stopped drinking. But my journey really began about 3 years before that. And I remember waking up one morning and I felt like shit. I had the horrible hangover and I picked up my journal and I wrote down, I feel like shit. I look like shit. Something's got to change. I think alcohol is getting in the way of my ambitions and my goals. I did. I wrote that down and I kind of pushed it aside and closed my journal and went on with life. And I wish I could tell you that that was like the moment, the aha, I never drank again, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. I started a routine where I would write my thoughts, especially after I drank, every morning. And there was this one particular time where we had a dinner party the night before. I drank way too much wine and I was in a bad place. And I had my coffee, and to be honest with you, I don't think I had enough energy or mental capacity or whatever you want to say. I just couldn't even face myself of writing something in my journal. So I flipped through the pages instead, something I really hadn't done. And I was reading past entries that I had been writing down. And I could see it. I could see the exact same feeling I was feeling that morning 3 months ago. One was like 6 weeks ago. And I realized that I was just doing the same thing over and over. I mean, I knew it already, but I didn't really have it face to face in my own handwriting. And the emotion just washed over me, and I teared up. And that was the moment. Not only did I have awareness now, but I had acceptance. I was dealing with something that was going to take a lot of effort. I wasn't exactly sure what to do next, but I knew that I needed to keep writing in my journal. And as a matter of fact, what I started doing was carrying that book, that journal, with me everywhere I went. And I used it as an accountability partner because I knew inside that journal was exactly how I really felt about alcohol. And so when I was faced with going to happy hour, it wasn't exactly an enjoyable experience, but let me just play this out. I would go have an experience of like being invited to a happy hour, and I would just look at that journal. I didn't necessarily even have to open it up and read it because I knew what it said. But sometimes I would look at it too, and I would think to myself, do I really want to write in my journal about how I drank at happy hour tomorrow? That's what I would say to myself. The part of me that wanted to be free of alcohol. And so that's what I did. The power of journaling. There's so much said about it all the time, like it's this big magical thing. It's a tool, just like any other tool. And if you can make it useful for you and your journey, I wish you the best. I'll see you in the next video. In this next video, I want to talk about doing an activity, something that I call just sitting by yourself. And what that entails is just finding a space in your home where you can sit all by yourself without being interrupted. For me, I used to sit on our patio. I live in gorgeous Texas. Our weather's pretty nice year round, so it never really gets that cold. So I was able to sit on the patio and just give myself 2 to 3 minutes alone. I would just tell my wife, hey, look, if you see me out there, would you just give me a little bit of space and I'll come back inside. I would make myself a cup of tea and I would go sit on the patio. So what does that look like exactly? You find yourself a space. You don't take, you take off your smartwatch if you have one, leave your phone behind, make a cup of tea, no book, no Kindle. This is not meditation. This is just sitting with yourself. And the objective is just to be bored. As silly as that sounds, I want you to feel bored. And you'll know you're doing it right when you have thoughts that come in your mind. Oh, I need to answer that email. Oh, my wife asked me to get something out of the garage. And look at today. Today is in Austin is just, there's not a cloud in the sky, not a single cloud in the sky. And what I want you to do is think about your mind like this beautiful blue sky behind me. And when a thought comes in your mind like, oh, I should clean the kitchen. Nope, that's like a cloud just floating by. And just give it a little push it away. Oh, I should answer that email. I really need to get on that work project. Nope, take that little cloud, push it away. Just distance yourself from those thoughts and sit there and be bored and push them out of your mind. In this video, I want to talk about walking, the simple act of walking out your front door and getting it done. Anytime I was experiencing doubt, concern, maybe a craving, just being in a place I didn't really want to be in, I would walk out the front door and I'd go for a walk. That led to me exploring other trails, coming here to downtown Austin and walking and enjoying it almost like a hobby. You see, when we do harder things like exercise, walking, cleaning the kitchen, writing by hand, those things require effort and they lead to something called a sense of contentment. Contentment is the feeling saying to yourself, wow, that was awesome. Like enjoying a great sunset. This is awesome. I feel full. I don't need anything more. When we seek things that are pleasurable and we seek things that are pleasure-based first, like for me, opening up a pint of Ben & Jerry's, I want to eat the whole doggone thing. You know, or maybe drinking, where you say, I'm just going to have one drink, and next thing you know, you're finishing off the bottle of wine. When we seek pleasure, pleasure will lead us towards addiction. And pleasure says things like, wow, this is awesome. This ice cream is amazing. I want the whole container. I want all of it. And you just want more and more and more. So by journaling, by sitting by ourselves, by walking, maybe doing extra chores around the house with the time that you have, those things require effort and will lead us to a sense of contentment. And contentment will help quiet our mind and bring us to a place of peace. Up to this point, I have not really addressed drinking or not drinking. Rather, my focus was on learning some core skills to help you gain confidence, develop a little bit more understanding about your drinking habits through journaling, and building something called self-agency. And self-agency means that you have the power to influence your circumstances and the outcomes. So by doing activities, you will make progress on your journey. Now there's a choice that you need to make. Do you stay here in section 1 and focus on the core skills and activities that we talked about and develop your routines and your habits? Or do you move to section 2? And in section 2, we're actually going to practice not drinking. Practice terms of sobriety. Not terms, but lengths of sobriety. 10 days, 30 days. Just to give you a little insight. There's no right or wrong answer. My opinion is always go with your gut. Trust your gut. You know what's the right thing to do for you. Welcome to section 2. In this section, we're going to use the skills that we learned in section 1 and build on them. And we're going to do something that I call practice sobriety. When I first decided to stop drinking and really take it seriously, I got pretty excited. Matter of fact, I was so excited I told like anybody and everybody who would listen. I would make these huge declarations. Never drinking again. I would go to parties and I would talk about it. I quickly learned that that wasn't probably the best idea. because I found myself at a wine party, and wine, red wine in particular, was a weakness of mine, or it was then, I should say. And some nice bottles of wine got opened, and I heard that little voice, just one glass. You can handle one glass. You probably won't be able to have a bottle of wine like this and you know, forever. You should enjoy it. Well, I woke up the next morning after drinking way more than one glass of wine, feeling regret and feeling shame. And after reflecting on that and journaling about it, I realized maybe shooting my mouth off and telling everyone that I wasn't going to drink and make these big declarations wasn't the best idea. And then after some more reflection, I realized that I learned a couple of things. The first thing I learned was that any change we make is really, really, really hard. I added a lot of reallys in there because it's really hard. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of focus. And number two, I needed to set a goal. Having a nebulous, I'm just never drinking again, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready, I wasn't prepared for the effort and the focus that I needed. And so I decided to set a goal. And I picked 10 days. And why did I pick 10 days? Well, my logic was the following. I decided on 10 days because I knew I could do a couple of days. Like a Monday wasn't a big deal, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday were my danger zone areas. Those were days that temptation would come probably stronger than I would like to admit. So I decided 10 days. That would get me through the weekend and a couple of extra days on the other side. And I wrote it on an index card, and I put it in my pocket, and I wrote on that index card, I will not drink for the next 10 days. After those 10 days, I'll figure it out at that point. But for 10 days, I will not drink no matter what. It's almost like a rocket ship, if you can go with me on this analogy. Meaning that when a rocket first leaves orbit, it's standing still, and when it makes the decision to lift off, it's got to use all of this energy to get itself going and lift it off the ground and heading into space. And at some point, it feels like it's never going to leave the atmosphere. There's so much energy poured out, and it's struggling, and it's hard, and it just probably wants to give up if it was a rocket ship. But then at some point, as it breaks through the atmosphere, it starts to get a little easier, and a little easier, and a little easier. And that's what I learned about the journey of sobriety. It's not exactly straight line, it's not linear, and it takes as much focus as you can possibly imagine to get the ship moving. By far, the number one issue when I talk with people, help people, and in my own life that stops us from not drinking and living a life of sobriety is cravings. Cravings create a lot of fear and trepidation and makes us nervous. And so let's talk about how to deal with cravings. Cravings, I've learned and see them as a bully. A bully. That's exactly how I view them. So there's this movie, we're close to the Christmas season. It's called The Christmas Story. And in this movie, the kids have to walk back and forth to school every day. And there's a bully that waits for them to try to take their lunch money. His name is Farkas. Scott Farkas, Steve Farkas, I don't know, it's Farkas. It's just like a bully type name. When Farkas jumps out and scares the kid, "Rawr!" They run away. They run away. But one time, the kid tripped, and Farkas was standing over the front of him, and he confronted the bully and punched him back in the nose. And the bully ran away crying. So, if we take that into our real world experience, you have two options when it comes to cravings that are effective. Number one, we can distract ourselves. We can remove ourselves from the environment. We can pick up a book. We can start doing a chore. We can get in our car and drive somewhere that doesn't have alcohol. We can call someone. There's a lot of different things we can do to try to distract ourselves. But that is only going to work in the short term. That won't make the cravings actually go away. The only way to defeat the bully, the cravings, is much like with Farkas. You have to stand your ground. You have to stand your ground and let these cravings dissipate. Let them know that you're not going to give in. So how exactly do we confront our cravings to help them go away? Well, one of the techniques that I used was making myself a cup of tea. So if I was at home and generally a craving would come on, this would be my first strategy. And what did that look like? I would start the kettle. So that started some time, putting water in the kettle, and then I would go find my chair outside on the patio and I would sit and wait for the tea. Now the craving is still with me at this point, and I would sit and I wouldn't fight the craving. I wouldn't push it away. I wouldn't shove it down. I would just let those feelings come across me. And yes, it is not the most pleasant experience, but then I would repeat a mantra to myself that was given to me by a dear friend. These are not the last feelings you will feel. You will get through this. You will get through this. You will get through this. This is not the last feeling I will feel. And I would say that over and over, kind of to myself, until I heard that tea kettle go off, and I would go make myself a cup of tea. So let me fast forward what this looks like in time. Over time, I would have the craving. I would put the water in the tea kettle and I would go sit. And then by the time the kettle went off, the craving was already gone. And then there was a time where I put water in the kettle and I forgot to go sit down and I got busy doing something else and the craving went away. The kettle went off. I didn't even make the tea. And then one time the craving came along. I didn't even bother with the tea. I just took a couple of deep breaths and I went on. Because over time, you're taking the power away and letting the craving know you're not going to respond to it. You're not going to respond to it. I hope you found this helpful. I'll see you in the next video. Next, I want to talk about changing your environment. And I'm going to use an example that's personal to me that's not related to alcohol that might help you gain some insight around this. So about 3 or 4 months ago, I started taking my health very seriously again. And I noticed, or I knew, that I had developed an ice cream habit right before bed. I love ice cream. It's hard not to love ice cream, in my opinion. It's got the sweet and the creamy and all the different flavors. And I would just have a small bowl before bed. But I realized it was not serving me, especially having it at the time of day that I was having it. And one of the first things I had to deal with was the fact that I was buying it and bringing it home. Why, if I didn't want to eat any more ice cream, was I buying it at the store and bringing it home? That was realization number one. And then one day when I've got that little habit that ticked off in my mind, oh, it's time for a little ice cream before I go to bed. And and it lights up, you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to that. I opened the freezer, I'm staring at that ice cream, and I took a pause. If you can imagine, I'm looking at the ice cream, it's looking back at me, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So after what seemed like forever, I picked up that ice cream, walked to the trash can, and I threw it away. About a year ago, I was working with someone, and I asked her, hey, do you have any alcohol in the home? And she said, yep, I have about a 6-pack of beer that's kind of tucked away in the back of the fridge. And I said, have you thought about getting rid of it? And I could tell by the hesitation in her voice that she had, and she didn't really want to get rid of it. And I just mentioned casually, hey, if you ever decide to start drinking again, you can always go to the store and buy more. It's just a 6-pack. And so we left it in her court to decide. And about 4 days later, I get this text message with a video attached. She had put the beer into a plastic grocery bag, she put it on her driveway, and she took her truck and she drove over the beer, just smashing them all across the driveway. And it was a great feeling to watch that video. But the thing that I loved even more was hearing her voice in the background say, hell yeah, as she put it in reverse and backed over him again. And it's that confidence is what we're going for. Those little signals that you send to yourself by throwing away things that you know you shouldn't have in the house, that are going to build that confidence for that next time you have to face your craving. I'll see you in the next video. The next thing I want to talk to you about is friends and friendship and how to handle friends. Friends can be so dicey. Meaning that some people you realize are just your drinking buddies, and if you don't drink with them, they're not really your friends, or they don't want to really hang out with you. And then there are other people that are in your life that go out of their way to invite, when they invite you to their home, to make sure there's something there for you to drink. And you know those are the people that want you to stick around, and you want to stick with them. But there was another strange element. I always had this feeling, and I'm not so sure why, that I just had hoped that one of my friends would just call me out of the blue and say, "Hey Terry, I know you're not drinking. I'm sure you're looking for things to do. How about this? Let's go do something. Let's go see a movie, someplace where you don't have to drink, and let's just hang out together and catch up and see how you're doing." But unfortunately, those calls never came. They never came. And so maybe I was a little resentful at the time, maybe, probably. And there was always a thought that would creep into my mind during that time of my sobriety journey. And that was, oh, look at me, I'm not drinking. Those people over there are drinking. I'm doing something good and healthy and good for myself. And they're over there just drinking it up and having a good time. Like I said, maybe it was resentment, or something else. But I'm here to tell you, get rid of those feelings if you feel them. Just push them away. Don't entertain them. Don't let them be a part of your life, because they're not helpful and they won't serve us. I promise you. So what I decided and what I learned was that I had to take my social life into my own hands. And so where I started with that was I wanted to develop some core habits that I thought might be fun, something outside of my phone, something that was in real life. So I went to a used bookstore in town. We have, very fortunate, to have half-price books in our area, plus a few others. And so I went and I decided to start reading fiction at the age of 50. I had read fiction books, but I wasn't really into reading fiction books. So I'm wandering around looking at the stacks, not really sure what I was going to pick up. And I happened to be in the section with John Steinbeck about eye level. And I noticed there was about 30 books called Of Mice and Men. And they were $1. Apparently, if you recall, it was school reading, right? So the kids had to read it, so there were a lot of copies of it. And they're very inexpensive, $1. The book, I think, is 100 pages, maybe a little less. So it's easy to read, to get through in a day. And it's a great book, and I would highly recommend it to you, amongst other things like just reading. And the reason why I like it so much is there's a story about two men, and there's a quote, and I can't quote it because I don't have it written down or memorized, but essentially they ask, they're migrant workers, right, going through California, and a third party asks one of them, "Hey, why do y'all hang out together?" And the gentleman said, "Hey, I've noticed as I've been a migrant worker, that when someone stays to themselves and is all alone, they get angry and they get mean, and they're not very happy. So while it's a good idea to isolate yourself and not go to certain happy hours for maybe a certain amount of time so that you're not tempted, I highly recommend that you engage back in your social life as fast as you feel comfortable with. I know it helped me. And I did that by reading more books, going to bookstores, and talking to people, and just being open and curious. I started fly fishing. There's all kinds of things that I did to sort of broaden out my social activities. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next section. Next, I want to talk about something called designing your day. I want you to sit and reflect next time you have your journal open, and just think about what a Monday through Friday might look like, an ideal day. No problems, everything's great, your wife loves you or your spouse loves you, the kids are all doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and how would that day look? And just write it down and reflect on it. Because during this process, we're going to try to mimic that day as best we can. And then I want you to do the same thing for a weekend. What does an ideal weekend look like? Now, we're not trying to go for perfection or that you have to do this every single day. Life is complicated and it gets messy. But I just want you to have a vision in your head of what an ideal day would look like so that you can have a target to go after. I would use my journal to record and log how my day was going. Not every little thing I did, But I would set times from the morning, and then around 10 o'clock, maybe 11 in the morning before I'd go to lunch, I would spend a few minutes with my journal, and I would reflect on how my morning went. How far off a plan was I? Did I have any cravings? Just self-awareness. I would bring self-awareness to the forefront. And then maybe 3 or 4 o'clock before I'd leave work for the day, I would have another reflection time, and I would look back upon some of the things that I wrote down in my journal. Did I have any stumbling blocks? Was I having certain feelings, maybe cravings that came out of nowhere? And then I would do the same thing around right before bed. For me, that's around 9 o'clock, and I would reflect on my day. How was my day overall? I would look at all the entries prior to. And I would do that over and over again. And I used it sort of like a gut check. A gut check. You know by now. Follow and trust your gut. You know the things you can and cannot fuck with. So trust your gut and use your journal as your guide. Next, I want to talk to you about something I call the reset ritual. For me, over the 2 years it took me from the time I decided to stop drinking to I actually had my last drink, I had a few lapses and would drink. Those were some of the roughest mornings that you're going to have, or that I had. And I developed something simple, and it took me a while to accept it. And I'm going to share with you what I would do. And I called it the reset ritual. That was coffee in hand at my desk, somewhere private, with my journal and a pen. And I would breathe and I would center myself. The first thing I would do is forgive myself. And that is probably the hardest step of the whole process. Forgiving yourself. Sincerely giving compassion and saying, you're doing the best. I'm doing the best that I can do. Even in the moment when I messed up, I'm doing the best I can do. This is part of the process. I don't accept it. I don't like it, but I'm going to forgive myself, because only forgiveness will put you in the place to reset. Next, I would think about why. And there's generally, in my experience, only 2 reasons. One, I put myself in a situation where the cravings came on so strong and I wasn't able to implement any of my techniques or my processes, and the craving just overwhelmed me. Those things happen. But then most of the time, maybe a larger part of the time, I would just say, fuck it. I want to drink and I'm going to drink. And I would start drinking. Those were the hardest ones, because those I had to forgive myself on, knowing that I didn't get tricked and it was literally my decision to drink. But once I did all of that and I really understood the reason why, and I would sit with that and I would forgive myself, then I would start again. And that is the secret sauce to the whole process. And what I mean by that is there would be a tendency when I would drink that I would wait. It was almost like, oh, well, I drank, I'll start again on Monday, and it's Thursday. And that would quietly give myself permission to drink all weekend. Not the best idea, although I've done that. The best idea is to say, I forgive myself, this is what I did, I'm gonna learn from it, and I start again right now. Right now at 9 a.m. in the morning, I'm starting again. So let me share an experience. There was one time I was cutting the grass and somebody had left beer in the fridge, and it was one of my favorite ambers that I used to drink. I didn't go to the store and buy it. There was about 3 of them left over from a dinner event that we had at our house. And I cut the grass, and I probably hadn't had anything to drink in 7 months. 7 months. And I was like, I want a beer. And whether, I can't really remember in the moment whether I thought I deserved it or I just wanted one. It wasn't even like a craving. It was just like a mental, like, I'm gonna do this thing to kind of show that my drinking is not a big deal. And I remember opening that beer and I took a sip, maybe 2 sips, and I thought to myself, is this really what I want? And I remember really thinking to myself, whatever it is I was looking for is not in this beer. It is not in this bottle. And I poured that beer out and I started again. So my message to you is the fastest possible way that you could just start again if you have any type of slip up. You forgive yourself and you start again. You forgive yourself and you start again. That is the most important part of the process. I hope this helps you, and I'll see you in the next section. Welcome to section 3. I'm so glad you've made it this far and that you're still with me, because this is the section where we break free from the cycle of our addiction and we set ourselves free. There's a point in the movie, The Matrix. It's an older movie, but it's a classic film about taking the hero's journey. And Neo, the lead character, is presented with two options, a red pill and a blue pill. You probably have heard this even if you've never seen the movie. And the blue pill is he's going to stay exactly where he is, trapped in the world that he now knows that's there, or the red pill, and he's going to be awoken and he's going to go on the adventure of his life and break free from the things that he's been a part of. It's a powerful moment in the movie. And he chooses the red pill. He chooses to awaken and follow that path. Now, does that mean that he's perfect and he can fight and he can do all the things and win at that moment in time? Absolutely not. But he made the decision. He made the decision and made the choice. It's called crossing the threshold. And we're at the point in our journey now where we need to make the decision. I'm never going to drink again. I know what alcohol does to me. I know that it's not serving me, and I want to leave it behind with 100% certainty. And once you cross that threshold, there's no going back. Does that mean that you'll never, that you won't drink again, that was your last drink? That's our hope. But if it doesn't turn out that way, we rely upon the reset ritual, we get started again, and we keep going. We never cross back over the threshold of being in all of the doubt that we were prior to. We now have the skills and the practice to continue our journey. What we need to do when you have a moment with your journal is to sit and write in your journal, I will never drink again. I'm 100% certain I'm going to get this done. And then sign your name. I wish you the best, and let's keep it going. As we're nearing the end of our time together, I want to share with you the experience that I had taking my last drink, my sobriety day, the one that I keep on this penny right here as a reminder. The year was 2018, and I had not had a thing to drink all year. And my wife and I planned a weekend getaway to a little town called Wimberley, Texas. It's about an hour outside of Austin. It's a little artist community. It's a lot of fun. And so I had a reservation at one of the nicer restaurants in town, and we got dressed up, and it was a lovely evening. And we were sitting there, and the waiter came to the table to take our drinks, take our drink order. And I don't know what came over me, but I said, I would love a glass of Cabernet. My wife gave me a little bit of an eyebrow raise, but she didn't say anything. And the wine came, and I took a sip of the wine. And I knew right then and there that I really, really didn't want to drink the wine. And I put the glass down, and my wife asked me if everything was okay. And I said to her, I asked her, I said, love, if I never drink again, is everything going to be okay? And I'll never forget, she reached out and grabbed my hand and just smiled at me with that smile that I love so much, and just said, I love you. I love you. And I sent the wine back. I didn't finish the glass of wine. And that was my last drink. A couple things that I learned from that experience. The first being that I realized that I wasn't really 100%. When I had those little cravings that would pop up from time to time, they were more like echoes versus cravings in the beginning. But there was still that thing that was like, maybe I'm missing out or something. I wasn't sure how to articulate it in the moment, but as I reflect back after all of these years, there was a small part of me that was still holding out hope that that I could do it all, that I could moderate, that I could drink when I want to and not want, and still live a quote unquote sober life. And I had to come to terms with that. And it's hard to come to terms with that. So as we wrap up our time together, my point to you is, if you still have those echoes and those feelings, there's probably some belief, something that you're holding on to. And instead of pushing it away, which is so easy to do at this stage because you have a pretty good handle of cravings and your emotions, but rather what I would do is sit with that and dig in and see what's underneath. See what's underneath that's driving that. And maybe you'll get to the place where you realize, this is what I need to let go of. In the workbook or the sheets that I provide down below, I have a list of common beliefs that people hold on to that hold them back from letting go of alcohol. Maybe you can read through those and find something that resonates with you that you can journal about and find your own path. The last thing that I would add was my wife's response that I didn't think about in the moment, but that I thought about as time went on. And that is, she didn't really answer my question. She did and she didn't. She didn't answer my question with words, but just with love. And that's because no one can really answer that question other than me. And so as you're on this path, just remember, this is your path. This is your journey. You define the rules, the terms, and what matters. Some would say, for example, that me taking that last drink, that last sip of wine, and resetting my clock, right? So that's my sobriety date, after having 9 months of sobriety prior, was something they might not do. But I knew in my heart of hearts that I wasn't fully ready to be sober until I had that moment. So that's what I set the date at. And that's up to you. All of this is up to you. You are in the driver's seat. That is one of my guiding principles that I hope that you've learned from these videos in this course. Well, I've reached the end of the path and our time together, but that doesn't mean that your journey has to end. I hope you continue to use this course as reference material for your path and your journey. If you would like to join a community, I host the Walking Sober Club. It is a place for us to gather, to ask questions, to sit on the front row and participate. There's weekly calls with me as the host and others in the community answering questions and supporting one another. There's a link below in the description of this video if you're curious about that and want to learn more. I wish you the best. My name is Terry. Thank you so much for watching.